Today on the podcast, we are talking about consistency. Now, this might be one of my favorite topics, but my guess is if you're tuning in today, it is something that you have struggled with. If you are making these grand plans to post your content, but find that you are falling off with your consistency, or maybe you do really well for an entire month and then you totally ghost the next month. The truth about consistency is that it's not about working harder. It's not about being motivated even. And it's definitely not about forcing yourself to show up every single day. The real issue that most entrepreneurs run into when it comes to consistency is that they aren't doing it in a sustainable way. So today we are going to dive into the 5 biggest reasons that entrepreneurs fail to consistently show up online. Because let's be honest, you have to be consistent as an entrepreneur. And so fixing these few things that might be affecting you could absolutely transform your business.
This is the Authentic Brand Builders Podcast with Michelle Knight.
Welcome back, Authentic Brand Builder, to another episode here on the podcast. Today, we are talking about one of the most crucial elements to growing and running a business, and that is the topic of consistency. Today, we're going to specifically talk about consistency in content, but please know that these 5 things really apply to all areas of your business. I've just come to discover that content is the number one place where my audience really struggles with showing up consistently online. So before we get into these 5 things, I want to take a moment to just bust one very, very quick myth about consistency. Consistency does not look the same for everyone. You might be thinking that consistency means that you are showing up every single day, and if that is not how you want to run your business, then that is not what consistency will mean to you. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to have a clear plan on what being consistent looks like and means for you. Because at the end of the day, when you are not consistent, that is actually harder for you in the long run. And we're all about working smarter and not harder here at Brand Mary. And you are doing yourself a disservice by falling off and then having to get back on again, by letting the momentum die and then building yourself back up again. But the good news is that 9 times out of 10, this isn't a you problem. It's actually a strategy problem. And I don't know about you, but that always makes me feel better about myself because a strategy I can pretty easily fix. Myself, well, we've been working on it for 30 plus years. My goal is that you can identify what consistency means to you and start showing up in a sustainable, consistent fashion, because being inconsistent leads to slower audience growth, missed opportunities, missed sales, and even a lack of confidence in yourself and your business. And we don't want that here, Authentic Brand Builder. So let's get into the 5 areas that you might need to go check yourself before you wreck yourself. Starting off with number 1, and this is an area that I have definitely fallen into time and time again as a business owner, and it is trying to do too much at once. This is when you spread yourself way too thin. You get that momentum boost and you're like, I can tackle it all. But we know that over a period of time, you actually cannot remain consistent with that tackling it all strategy, especially if you are a solopreneur or even if you only have one contracted team member that supports you. Doing it all just is not sustainable unless you have a large team. This is honestly one of the reasons that I created the Authentic Brand Builders Academy, because I witnessed time and time again entrepreneurs wanting to improve their marketing and trying to do it all in one time. And inside of the Academy, we teach a phased out approach. I always recommend that my clients on our one-on-one calls or inside the group when they're asking questions say, all right, I'm going to commit to something for 30 days. I'm going to get into a routine with that. I'm going to fix my systems around that. Then when I only feel confident in that one phase, will I move on to the next phase? And so in an ideal world, yes, it would be, 30 days, but it could be 60 days or 90 days per phase, depending on what you're adding on. One thing you'll start to realize is that as you start to add on and repurpose your content, those timelines for each phase actually get shorter because you get faster and you already understand what your baseline for consistency is. So if you find that you're jumping from one strategy to another strategy, or you're trying one platform and then another platform and then 2 or 3 or 4 platforms all at once, and it's just not sticking long term, you need to simplify your business. Here at Brand Mary, we call it back to basics. I can't tell you how many times my husband has to remind me to go back to basics, because Yes, even I get a little ahead of myself when I'm feeling energized and feeling inspired. But again, we're focused on sustainable strategies here, sustainable consistency. And the only way that you're going to create a sustainable approach to running your business is making sure that you're not stretched too thin. So I recommend that you start with 1 or 2 platforms, depending on where you're at in your business, or 1 or 2 strategies, and you focus on creating a clear plan on what consistency looks like for you. So for instance, I do a weekly podcast episode and bi-weekly YouTube videos because weekly YouTube videos was not working for Michelle. I have many clients who come in and they say, I want to blog, but I cannot be blogging every single week. So we figure out what that consistent number is for them. Choose your platform or your strategy and choose your consistency number. Simplify the process to simplify your life. All right, number 2. And this is a big strategy one because most of you probably don't even have a marketing strategy. You think that posting consistently is your strategy, but that's not what a strategy is. I want you to think about a strategy as a plan. It's a plan that you will ultimately stick to, and then the posting of the content are the action steps that you are taking within your workflow. So if you are winging it without a clear plan, then you have no structure. And over the course of a few weeks or a few months, you're going to have no consistency as well. I often see this when entrepreneurs are feeling really overwhelmed with what to post and they're flying by the seat of their pants or throwing spaghetti at the wall every single week trying to come up with ideas. When you have a clear plan or workflow for your content creation, you will already have that mapped out. And when it comes to consistency and feeling overwhelmed in this way, I always recommend my clients inside of the academy plan 90 days in advance. Now, if that freaks you out and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of content ideas, Michelle, and that's a lot that I've got to, take time out of my busy schedule to plan 90 days, carving out a little bit of time at the beginning of each quarter to map out the content ideas that you will ultimately create is going to save you so much time in the long run. It's also going to remove the overwhelm, and it's going to remove this obstacle of you not only having to come up with content ideas, map out the content topic that you're going to be doing that week, but then create the content. I want to make it so that you've got a clear plan and workflow in place so that you just have to create the content when it is time to create the content. You can also then embrace more of a batch content creation approach if you find that you fall off your consistency at certain times of the month or you have a big vacation planned. You can get a little bit ahead of it. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you already have a clear, repeatable workflow in place. Now, my favorite place to create my marketing workflows is inside of ClickUp, but you could also use a spreadsheet or a calendar. Inside of my programs, I teach my clients how to use ClickUp because we can then attach that workflow to all their new content ideas. It's also a place where you can store all of your content ideas because how many times have you gotten a really good content idea and didn't have a place to put it? And then when it came time to create the content or plan the content, you freaking forgot about it. So I have a master content idea dump station, which is a place where I put all of my content ideas when they happen. So when I go to plan out my 90 days, I can easily pull from that list or use other strategies like SEO tools to come up with content ideas. Number 3, a lot of people rely on motivation to create their content. I'm not feeling motivated, so I'm not creating my content. But the reality is you're not going to feel motivated every single week in your business. I've talked about this a bit when it comes to habits, actually paying attention to your cycle and being able to match up your content creation with certain stages of your cycle. We also all know that there are things that happen that are completely unexpected, like vacation or getting sick or something with our kiddos. And that can throw off your motivation. And if you're waiting for that motivation to return, you might be waiting a really long time. There are also other aspects that are important to pay attention to, like your human design or astrology, if you're into things like that. There are going to be periods of life when you are motivated and periods when you're not. And if you're 100% relying on motivation, you're not going to be consistent in your business. So how do we remain consistent when we don't feel motivated? We have clear systems in place. This means that you create a non-negotiable habit and a system to support you with that habit so that even when you don't feel like it, you can still show up. Now, I know sometimes we got to give ourselves a pep talk. I don't know how many times I've had to personally sit down and go, Michelle, you can record this podcast today. You can put on makeup and make a YouTube video. You can do this. But I'll tell you, it's a hell of a lot easier because that's all I have to do. My ideas are already planned. My workflow is in place. My script is already mapped out. I just have to sit my butt in this chair, turn on Descript, and start recording. And the only way I'm able to do that is because I remove as much friction as possible with the creation process. I have a clear system for coming up with content ideas, a clear system for organizing my content, a clear system for recording and editing my content. I use templates and ChatGPT and ClickUp to make my life a lot easier. If you're not only having to motivate yourself and then also take all of those steps from scratch every single time you have to create content, it's no wonder why you don't have the motivation or energy to do it. Another thing with habit building is that you have to make it a non-negotiable. So I always encourage my clients to have a content specific day. On Monday, I create my content, and then I use my time throughout the rest of the week to repurpose my content and schedule my content so that it's ready for a release on Thursdays for my podcast episodes. The good thing about doing this early in the week, like on a Monday, is if something does come up, I have a few more days to record it and take care of those steps. But again, those steps are completely mapped out for me. I literally just have to go through the process and check them off after I put my butt in this chair and hit record. So ask yourself, have you made content creation a non-negotiable? Do you have a specific day on your calendar that is blocked out for content creation? To this day, I still block out time in my personal calendar for recording my podcast so that I know when it's happening, my family knows when it's happening, and they can also hold me accountable. There have been so many times where my husband's like, I thought you were recording a podcast, and then I have to answer to someone else other than myself on why I'm not recording it. And 9 times out of 10, I go, okay, fine. And I go and I do it anyway. Because again, all I have to do is sit down and do it. I've already taken the steps to prepare the content, so it's ready to record. And this works for anything, whether you're doing a podcast episode, YouTube, writing a blog post, scheduling social media content. Pick a day, put it on the calendar, give yourself enough time to do the steps that you need to do. And just like we talked about before, have a clear plan and workflow that's going to support you in actually doing that work. James Clear, one of my favorite authors, says you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And nothing could be more true when it comes to consistency and content creation. All right, these last two are going to be a bit of a mindset shift for some of you. And so I hope that you are tuned in and ready, because number 4 is that most of you are giving up way too soon on your process. It's really easy to expect fast results as an online entrepreneur. We are constantly bombarded with messages of, I built my business in 1 week. I made 10K in 10 days. I went viral with one reel. I grew my Instagram to 100,000 people in 6 months, so on and so forth. If you haven't heard those messages, good freaking for you. Where are you hiding? Let me know, because it can be really overwhelming. And it can make you think that you are absolutely just have to change your complete strategy and your whole approach to doing things, when the reality is most of those success stories took months, if not years, to achieve. And most entrepreneurs are giving up or throwing in the towel before the results actually kick in. And that's the thing about consistency. You have to keep going even if the results aren't quite there. Or what I like to do is I like to lower my expectations and identify key growth metrics that work for me and my brand. And so going viral is not something that I am going to want to achieve, because I know that I don't show up enough on social media. I don't want to post every single day. And so me thinking that I'm going to post one reel on a Tuesday after a whole week and it's going to absolutely go viral and make me 6 figures in revenue is irrational thinking. But if I tell myself that if my consistency looks like 3 posts every single week, and after doing that consistently for 60 to 90 days, I start to look at numbers. Has my follower count gone up? Have I been able to trace back sales? Have I made more connections? Have I increased my engagement? Indicating that what I'm doing is working, and it's working based on how I'm showing up for my brand. It's so important as an entrepreneur to understand that consistency compounds over time. It's not about short-term results. And if that's all you're really going for as an entrepreneur, you're going to find that growing and scaling your business in a sustainable way is incredibly difficult because it's not about short-term results. It's about long-term sustainable results. One of the things I like to do is give myself a deadline for a new strategy. So I'm experimenting with a new way of running Facebook ads right now. And after the first few weeks, things were not looking amazing, but I dedicated at least 60 days to my strategy. And after that first 2 weeks, I started to see a shift in my metrics. I started to see much lower than expected cost per lead. I started to see sales off the back end. Imagine what would have happened if I would have given up after those first 2 weeks. So give yourself a consistent deadline on how long you're going to stick to that strategy. And again, look at metrics that you can watch that are going to indicate that these small consistent measures are compounding into long-term growth. And the final one, number 5, and it goes back to your mission. It goes back to your why. You might have a why or a mission for your brand as a whole, and that's great, but it's probably pretty big, and it's something that you are deeply emotionally connected to, but it might not translate to all the little things that you're doing every day in your business. It's also something that's probably measured in terms of long-term success and not these daily actions that you're taking. So what I recommend my clients do is get really clear on the purpose of why they are creating content. Why are you doing this? Why are you showing up on this specific platform? Why are you showing up in this specific way? If you choose to show up on social media, why are you doing that? And I got to break it to you, it cannot be to make more money. It needs to be deeper than that. Because the why that you have, the why that you are emotionally connected to will translate into more money. It will translate into more revenue. But reconnecting to your personal mission and the impact that you want to have through your content creation is going to help you maintain that excitement. And so in those moments when you are losing momentum and things feel like they should just be burning down around you, you remind yourself that even if this one video reaches 5 people, that's 5 people that I have reached today. If this one Instagram reel reaches 500 people, imagine having 500 people in a room. If this one podcast episode results in me getting one DM from someone saying they were impacted by this, I've achieved what I needed to achieve. This goes back to what we talked about before of how consistency compounds, and you have those tiny little markers that you can measure that show you that you are on your way to bigger and better things, that the work that you are doing at this level, the consistent work that you're doing is going to continue to grow and scale. But if you aren't clear on why you're doing that and why that is important to you and you don't feel emotionally connected to that, you're not going to have that guiding light when you run into issues, when you run into trouble, when things don't work out the way that you ultimately want them to. And now I share these 5 things with you because, again, I've been through this and I've worked with so many clients who have been through this as well in all of my programs, in all different aspects. We're talking about content creation, but you can sub content creation for anything. The branding process, copywriting, marketing, selling with your business, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Consistency is the lifeline when it comes to building a business. You don't need more willpower. You need a strategy. You don't need to cross your fingers and wish and to ride the momentum waves. You need to have a strategy to fall back on because there are days, weeks, and months when I don't freaking feel like it too. And I might have to adjust my consistency to support me during that period of time, but I'm still showing up. I'm not ghosting my audience, and I'm still providing value, which allows me to still make sales even when I don't feel like being in front of a camera or writing a freaking email. And yes, because I know you're probably thinking it, what if it just isn't working? What if after 90 days it's still not working? Then you know you were consistent, you gave it your all, it's time to adjust your strategy. This could be a change in your messaging. It could be a change in your platform. It could be a change in what type of content that you ultimately create. And this is why having a space to ask those questions and get feedback, whether that's through one-to-one, a group program, or a membership like the Academy, is so powerful because you can come in and you can say, I've done this for 90 days. I can prove that I was consistent. Here is the data that I have. It still is not working. What do you suggest that I do? And having that outside perspective is so freaking powerful. So just a quick recap, because I want you to focus on just one of these things this week, because that was our first one, right? Focus on one thing. Don't try to do a million things at once, because you're not going to be able to remain consistent long term, which is ultimately the goal. If you're someone who does something for 2 weeks and then falls off, this is probably what's happening. It's time to simplify and it's time to focus. Number 2, you don't have a clear plan in place. What is your plan for showing up in your business? Do you have a clear workflow that's going to support you in executing that plan? Number 3, you're relying on motivation. Motivation isn't always going to be there. So making sure that you have systems and automation set up so that even on days when you don't feel like it, you can sit down for 30 minutes, knock it out, and know that you're able to show up that week. This goes back to having a designated day for you to create your content, preferably at the beginning of the week in case you need a little extra time to make it happen. Are you expecting too quick results? If you are, start to look at different metrics that you can measure while you are testing your consistency to keep you going. And finally, reconnect with your why. Why are you creating content in this way? Why are you showing up? Who do you want to impact? Sometimes this one little tweak and a constant reminder of it, put a post-it note on your laptop, can help you keep the consistency going. You're obviously here because remaining consistent is something that you struggle with. And so one of the things that I have created for entrepreneurs just like you is the Content Strategy Playbook. If you want to go ahead and get your hands on this free resource, you can go to brandmary.com/playbook. And if you're ready to take the next step and mapping out a content strategy, that system that I talked about before, that's going to perform for you long term, even when you don't feel motivated, and it's going to make it easier for you to create a multi-channel approach, you can also go to brandmary.com/content roadmap, and that is going to be my Content Made Simple mini course that's going to walk you through the entire process of creating your customized, consistent content strategy. Again, consistency is the lifeline as an entrepreneur, and you have to find a way to remain consistent, show up consistently that works for you and your business. Something we're all about here at the Authentic Brand Builders podcast. Consistency is not going to look the same for everyone, and you really need to find the way that's going to work best for you. Again, that Content Strategy Playbook is going to help you in figuring out what that might look like. You can go to brandmary.com/playbook to download that for free. I will be back with another episode next week. Until then, stay consistent, my friend.